Hello. Before we begin, a quick note. The Boy to Sleep podcast relies on you and sponsors, which means you will hear a quick advertisement before the beginning of tonight's episode. While the podcast is free, you are welcome to subscribe for just $2.99 per month, which supports the creation of this podcast and gives you an ad-free listening experience. Simply click the link in the show notes from your podcast app. Rest easy.
At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby! Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Hello. Welcome to the Bore You to Sleep podcast. The podcast that will hopefully help you get to sleep. I am going to read an open source book, one that is not particularly interesting, but one that is hopefully boring enough to get you to sleep. Tonight's reading comes from The Giant Sequoia, written by Rodney Sydes Ellsworth and published in 1924. This story explores the lives of some of the oldest living things on planet Earth. My name is Teddy, and I aim to help people everywhere get a good night's rest. Sleep is so important, and my mission is to help you get the rest you need. The podcast is designed to play in the background while you slowly fall asleep. For those of you who are new to the podcast, you may not know that it started from my own struggles with sleep. I wanted to create a resource for others facing similar challenges, and I'm so grateful for the amazing community we have built together. This podcast is self-made and self-produced. That is why you'll hear a short ad at the beginning of each episode. These ads, along with support from subscribers and patrons on Patreon, enable me to keep delivering this podcast for free to those who need it. Thank you to everyone who shared their words of gratitude with me during the week. Whether through the website or your podcast app, your messages mean the world to me. If you find the podcast beneficial and would like to support it, here are a few ways you can contribute. Follow the podcast in your podcast app and leave a comment. Become a subscriber for $2.99 per month. This removes any ads and helps support episode creation. If subscribing is not possible, an easy way to help is simply by leaving a review and rating in your app. If you would ever like to say hello, you can do that by visiting boytosleep.com. And of course, if you know someone out there who also needs a good night's rest, you're welcome to share the podcast with them. In the meantime, lie back, relax, and enjoy the readings. The Giant Sequoia, an account of the history and characteristics of the big trees of California, by Rodney Sydes Ellsworth. Preface. That imposing calm which the great sequoia of the Sierra Nevada exerts over many came to be individually impressed upon the author during a summer's residence in the Mariposa Grove 2 years ago. These studies at length stimulated another desire, that of making the gist of the scattered and heterogeneous mass of material, ranging from popular rhapsodies to scientific treatises, available and accessible to all. It was likewise the author's ambition to effect a symmetrical presentation, if possible, of both the popular and the scientific aspects of the subject. Hence the rhapsodies have been robbed of their purple and treatises, have been faintly touched with imagination to make them possess an interest for the general reader. By this it must not be presumed that gravity and fidelity have been neglected. They have been preserved throughout. This book has been written primarily for the good of the greatest number. It is not by a botanist for botanists, but by a tree lover for tree lovers. And if from its pages there emanates, however faintly, something of the inspiring and ennobling presence of the giant sequoia, the author will not have dusted off many an old volume and entertained himself with an examination of its contents in vain. The author is greatly indebted to Miss Crystal Hastings for her untiring aid in the preparation of the manuscript. He also wishes to extend gratitude to Mr. William T. Amos, who had rendered much invaluable assistance and counsel. Hearty thanks are due various professors of the University of California, from whom the author, as a student and friend, has received many helpful criticisms and suggestions. Rodney Sydes Ellsworth, Berkeley, California, April 17, 1924. Chapter 1. The Auld Lang Syne of Trees. The sequoia is nature's most magnificent endowment. King of trees, it has no rival in size the world over, nor is it approached among living things in age. Noblest of all conifers, it has the grandeur of granite and the solemnity of marble. Venerable in aspect, it savours of great antiquity, seeming always to wrap itself in the memories of the past. So striking, indeed, is this feature of its appearance, that the intellectual traveller often wonders if its race has played a grander part in the past. Is it a living survivor of an extinct age of monsters? Time was, and not long ago, when such a question bearing on the antiquity of the sequoia would have been lightly considered. Now, however, mankind is not altogether satisfied with things as they are, but is mindful of how they came to be so, and the ceaseless searches of science are unveiling the mysteries of the past. The spade unearths a coin whose imprint betrays the beliefs or customs, the finish or crudeness of an ancient civilization. The discovery of a clay tablet, the uncovering of a ruined temple or a forgotten tomb, sheds fresh light upon the history of a people. Bit by bit, the evidence accumulates, and as the vision of the past becomes less dim, science is better able to conjure up before the mental eye the imposing pageants of a world that has passed away. Shakespeare calls the world a stage. The illusion, though, is confined to men and women. But as the scientist views the great earth drama that has been enacted throughout the ages, he sees a far more extensive application of this thought. To him, the races of the children of life are the players. By reason of the fact that all life has been superseded by more complex and more highly evolved forms. Indeed, for millions of years, countless multitudes of living creatures have played their little parts on this earthly stage, and have gone their way into oblivion. The majority have left as little record as the autumn leaves that drift by the wayside. These are the so-called lost creations, yet a sufficient number have been preserved for the later instruction and delight of man. Everything observed, Emerson, in nature tends to write its own history. The planet and the pebble are attended by their shadows. The rolling rock leaves its furrows on the mountainside, the river its channel in the soil, the animal its bone in the stratum, the fern its modest epitaph in the coal. These remains filed away in the archives of nature's great storehouse constitute the record of the rocks. And as science reconstructs a civilization of yesterday from its rude implements, in a similar manner it interprets the mute meaning of these fossils in the rocks. The dry bones and empty footprints are given animation and pictured as they are supposed to have been when alive. Great flying reptiles, called pterodactyls, with an enormous wingspread of 25 feet, have fallen into Miocene seas, have been entombed with the leaves and muds of their shallow bottoms. Huge reptiles called dinosaurs have stalked across the mud flats of primeval lakes, leaving their broad footprints in the oozy surface. The tide has come in and gently covered the impression with a fine sediment, and preserved it forever. Further deposits of sediment have accumulated and the whole becomes submerged, until, under constant pressure, they have been compacted into rock, and into the course of time have been raised again to dry land. The record of the rocks discloses the fact that the sequoia flourished on the earth when these dragons of old time and their weird kin inhabited it. Its forests extended over 3 continents, and it blessed with its shade these creatures more strange and huge than the earth has since borne. Under its high, arching columns, dinosaurs took toll of all that could be conquered. Within sight of its imposing forests, others, equally formidable, wallowed in shallow seas, while overhead soared pterodactyls, neither bats nor birds, but giant lizards that had acquired the power of flight. This was millions of years ago. It was during the middle period of life, or what geologists term the Miocene. It was before the advent of fur and feathers, eons almost before man's coming. In point of time, the antiquity of all living things on earth today is of a recent yesterday when compared to the antiquity of the sequoia. The frail tenure of human works is as but 1,000 years amid eternity, nothing a mockery. The pick of the fossil hunter has unearthed fossil remains of sequoia leaves and cones in strata as early as the Triassic. This period represents the morning of reptilian life, and is the first of 3 great ages of the Miocene. At its advent, moving life had already safely crossed the border line of its dependence on water for existence and had succeeded, slowly and laboriously, in invading dry land. Hence the sequoia, as a race, has a claim to almost fabulous antiquity. Memorials of the sequoia's ancestry are more abundant in the rocks of the 2 succeeding periods of the Miocene, the Jurassic and the Cretaceous. Under the lava flows of Mount Shasta, imprints of its leaves and cones are found. This is indubitable evidence that the sequoia existed in California at that time. Fossil remains have also been found in localities ranging from France and Hungary to Spitsbergen, and from Greenland to Oregon and Nebraska. These stratified remains offer positive proof that the sequoia was a great genus covering the entire northern hemisphere, and that the now desolate Arctic regions, which were then warm, were luxuriant with many of its species. In short, the sequoia was one of the chief garments of the Earth's vegetation during Miocene times. Its forests must have been the most imposing the Earth has ever known. Truly, they were the forests primeval. It is not a little remarkable that the sequoia was in existence even before the very mountains which are ennobled today by its presence. The vagaries of mutability have been such that it was actually present on Earth during the genesis of the Sierra Nevada, and saw this range lifted to its place in the sun. Indeed, the eternality of the hills is a misnomer, for mountains have their birth and their youth, their old age and their obliteration. Like successions of living forms, they have had their entrance and exit on this terrestrial stage. During the early period of the Miocene, that country which lay between the Rockies and the Pacific was a flat plain of low relief, with meandering streams and vague divides. Occasional rounded hills broke the monotony of this plain. These were but the abraded stumps of a pre-existing mountain mass, the ruins of mountains that had been. About Jurassic time, a general disturbance occurred in the present region of the Sierra Nevada. This was accompanied by an intrusion of a vast body of molten rock which, when solidified, became the granite of the Sierra. During the Cretaceous, the entire region between the Rockies and the Pacific again awoke, and began to bulge at slow and intermittent intervals. The Sierra block had its origin during one of these upheavals, and acquired a slight westward slant. During the age that gave man to the world, the Sierra was uplifted to the light. About the dawn of the Quaternary, the last of the great divisions of geological time, the greatest manifestation of Sierra mountain building took place. This convulsion of the earth hoisted the snowy range to its present sublime elevation. Following this upheaval came an age of ice. It is to this period that Yosemite Valley owes its glaciation. In fact, the present indefinable charm and fierce grandeur of the High Sierra are legacies of this reign of ice. However, the glaciation of the Sierra must not be correlated with the continental glaciations which ushered in the age succeeding the Miocene. The former glaciation is more properly to be regarded as corresponding to the very last episode of that long and varied chapter in the geological history of the continent, states Lawson. Though the final uplift of the Sierra block is a long time past as years go, geologically speaking, it is not remote. Indeed, the Sierra Nevada might safely be placed among the young and giddy mountains of our planet. From the comparative point of view, on the other hand, the waste of years that have elapsed since the sequoia first waved its magnificent evergreen dome toward the heavens is bewildering. Impressive as the evolution of the Sierra must have been, few of the dramas of the earth which science has restored are more wonderful than the restriction of the sequoia exclusively to the mountains of California. The record of the rocks following the great age of reptiles tells quite a different story. With amazing abruptness, all the rich diversity of reptilian life apparently ceased. Some changes seemed to have occurred, blotting it out forever, for not a scrap of evidence remains of its continued existence. The dinosaurs are no more, the pterodactyls have vanished. A new type of life, that of the mammal, now holds dominion over the earth. Most astounding of all, the sequoia still carries on, even to the present day, living survivor of the age of reptiles. Authorities are not agreed concerning the causes that led to the extinction of reptiles. Science still ponders over the mystery. A feature so extraordinary seems to demand an unusual explanation. Causes of a violent, cataclysmic nature are advanced as valid interpretations. Yet science refuses to take cognizance of universal calamities and considers them as apocryphal because they are too unnatural. Climatic conditions in the main are probably responsible, for it is upon climate that the wealth or poverty of life on the globe depends. That which was a land of comfort, of abundant food, and of continual summer may have become, through a process of alternate haste and deliberation, a land of long winters, of bitterness and hardship. The good days of the world were exchanged for hard times, and those who could not survive were gathered to their forefathers. This, together with volcanic eruptions which took place on a stupendous scale, followed by glaciations of continental extent, apparently conspired in the ultimate undoing of reptilian life. These causes, in all likelihood, are responsible also for the shrinking of the majestic Sequoian woodlands to a mere fragment of their ancient, vast extent. About the end of the Miocene, the earth became intensely active. In its agitation, some of its seething interior was exuded to the surface in a deluge of lava. At the same time, fountains of molten rocks shot up from volcanoes, causing the heavens to rain fire about them, and sifting ashes afar over the earth. Rivers and lakes floated up in immense clouds of steam, over which the blazing beacons suffused weird colorings. Lights and shades of an inferno that not even the pen of a Dante would have the temerity to attempt to describe. A land of beauty had become filled with forms of the gloomiest and ghostliest grandeur. The great dinosaurs looked with disquietude upon it all. Unable, by reason of their cumbersomeness, to migrate to a gentler clime, they stoically awaited their doom. The pterodactyls, terrified, fluttered to the ground, flapping their great useless wings as the unearthly flashes from the heavens fell upon them. The noble sequoias, even more impotent to make a retreat, held their ground until set afire, or enveloped in floods of molten lava. At length, having exhausted its fury, this agent of wholesale ruin ceased as if stricken lifeless in the midst of its maddest rioting, and the land became a far-stretching waste out of which life had apparently gone forever. The unknown complex of causes which brought about the ice age that followed probably completed extermination of the reptiles, and it certainly brought the sequoia, as a race, perilously near to extinction. The temperature became too cold for life, adapted to the warm conditions of the Miocene age. As a result, reptilian life paled and declined, until finally its feeble flame flickered out entirely with the arrival of the glacial epoch. The vast amount of water that had been vaporized during the volcanic eruptions returned to the earth in the form of snow. This accumulated in such enormous quantities that continents came to be white worlds, where the vacant sky communed only with the silent ice. Pulseless and cold, these vast continental ice caps were as eloquent of death as were the fiery lava flows. Uncharted, trackless seas of ice they were, with all traces of earthly travail buried far beneath them, and a terrible solitude was the lord of this universe. The scientific world is equally perplexed regarding the mysterious chain of events that caused the amelioration of climate. At any rate, the warmth of summer gradually overtook the snows of winter, and the ice wasted away. Like a morning mist, it vanished in the sunshine. Lakes filled the yawning throats of volcanoes. Light and beauty replaced ashes and death. Life, too, ebbed back from the Southland and conquered the desolation, filling the vacant world with a glorious animation. But it was a different type of life that came. Mammals instead of reptiles now held undisputed dominion. Of all the rich diversity of life that flourished before the advent of the ordeal of volcanic fire, and the chilling empire of ice, apparently only the sequoia escaped utter destruction. It is this singular survival that prompted John Muir to write of the sequoia as a tree which the friendly pines and firs seem to know nothing about. Ancient of other days, it keeps you at a distance, taking no notice of you, speaking only to the winds, thinking only in the sky, looking as strange in aspect and behaviour among the neighbouring trees as would the homely mastodon and hairy elephant among the bears and deers. It belongs to an ancient stock and has a strange air of other days about it, a thoroughbred look inherited from the long ago, the old lang syne of trees. But two species of the genus Sequoia carry on the noble line in these feeble times, scions of a race whose ancestors extend into the depths of the ages. They seem to not be part of this puny world. Gigantic in proportion, they are not unlike uncouth vestiges of another age, when all things were moulded on a monstrous scale. Numbering their years by thousands, they are an unaccountable oversight in a world where lives are limited to the psalmist's span of years, and where there is no hope of gaining the length of days of Methuselah and his kin. Indeed, they appear to be more like mysterious strangers from some far star than solitary and lonely survivors in the midst of an unfamiliar new age. Patiently accepting the part of onlookers, they disdain to take their place in the active ways of the world, and continue to exist for no apparent reason, other than to preserve the pristine glory of their ancestors, lest it die with them and leave the coming years. Rarest of all tree species, these two survivors are the giant sequoia, or Sequoia giantea, and the redwood, or Sequoia sempervirens. Both are impressive in the mystery that hangs over their history, but it is only this that they may be said to have in common. In almost every other respect, they are quite dissimilar. True, the giant sequoia is a grander and more massive edition of the redwood. However, the former puts the latter in the shade as to girth, while the latter dwarfs the former as to height. The big tree is unexceeded among trees in girth. The redwood probably outstrips all trees of the world in height. Rarely does the big tree lift its towering column of verdure more than 280 feet into the heavens. Yet it attains an amazing trunk diameter of 20 to 27 feet, well above its immense swollen base. The redwood seldom produces a trunk more than 15 feet in diameter, and the average of the larger trees range from 8 to 12 feet. Trees 280 feet high are not altogether uncommon. Some even wave their evergreen crowns 340 dizzy feet above the ground, truly a prodigious altitude for living shafts of wood to attain. The big tree keeps its youth longer than any known tree, and for this reason it's acclaimed the oldest living thing. Frequently it reaches as great an age as 2,500 years. A few giant sequoias are known to have passed their 3,000th year. Seemingly, this figure fails to convey a satisfactory comprehension of the magnitude of such a great age to the minds of popular writers. As a consequence, the age of this grand tree has suffered unpardonable padding. Nevertheless, such estimates are not conclusive, and the rest only on the speculative notions of fanciful writers. The redwood, on the other hand, while quite noteworthy in longevity in the tree world, scarcely sees 1,000 summers. It must yield the palm in all honour to its greater cousin, which ranks first in age of all the worthies of the tree kingdom, and hence in the world of living things. The Sequoia sempervirens is one of the most consummately beautiful of trees. Its beauty is as rare and undefinable as the blue on the mountains in the hour of twilight, as startling and lovely as a flower-clad April, as charming and delightful as the notes of a melody that the winds bear away. And yet beauty is its least perfection. All the cheerful gaiety, the contented peacefulness, the warm companionship that are the chief glory of other trees, the redwood too possesses. It is one of the most lovable and friendly of trees, but there is nothing rough or common about it, nothing coarse or voluptuous. To know it is to know something that is genuine. To admire it is to be unable to look upon it with the cold eye of a judge, but with the reverence of a worshipper and the veneration of a child. The Sequoia gigantea is formidable and sombre in aspect, and very often terrible to look upon. Impassive, unapproachable, uncommunicative, it is the very autocrat of the forest. Godlike in physiognomy, at times it is impossible to understand. It has a loftiness of port, a dignity of bearing, a sublimity of energy that command attention and win their way insensibly into the soul. Its nature is as hard and flinty as the granite of the mountainside. But in spite of all this high mightiness, there is something forlorn and pathetic, something sad and benign about it all. All who know the pathos in memories of days that are accomplished and faces that have vanished will realize how replete this tree is with sadness and tenderness. Grand though it is in the religious solemnity and silence that rest upon it, there is something pathetic about its very loneliness that resembles sadness, as mist resembles the rain. Assuredly, If the Sequoia sempervirens is the most lively and cheerful of trees, the Sequoia gigantea is the saddest and the grandest. If the redwood be considered Grecian in its glory, the giant sequoia is Roman in its grandeur. Both produce forests of giants, in one beauty and grace held splendid court, in the other greatness and magnificence. The one is Grecian in its idealism, so divine in its loftiness as to exert an elevating and ennobling influence, and so fine in its perfection of form as to epitomize this immortal quality of Athenian genius. The other is Roman in its invincible strength, so imposing in its stolidity and massiveness as to embarrass its beholders, and so baffling in its superiority as to thrill them with awe and fill them with wonder. One is an emblem of eternal youth, ever sprouting phoenix-like from its ruins, and pressing with youthful vigour upon the faltering footsteps of its mouldering sires, exempt, like the immortal influence of Greece, from mutability and decay. The other is an emblem of permanence, a form of endurance standing among the temporary shapes of time, a structure not unlike a Roman pile, built to withstand the onslaught of the ages. And that concludes tonight's readings. If you're not quite tired yet, please feel free to listen to another episode of the Boy to Sleep podcast. Until next time, good night.